What's up, y'all? This is another episode of Crazy Scary Cool. I'm Chris, and I'm here to give you a. I think I'm going to be spoiling this one. Of Never Let Go. So Never Let Go came out, I think, 2 weeks ago now. Um, it stars Halle Berry. And I apologize, but I'm gonna forget the two boys' names. But this is a film about a woman, played by Halle Berry, her two sons who are out in the woods, deep in the woods, and they isolate themselves from an unseen. Well, we see the force sometimes, but only the mother sees the force at times. That kind of, I'll get to that. um but she believes that there's an evil in the world that has permeated through the woods, the rest of the world, and the only place that is safe is in this house that is deep in the woods. I don't know what state they're in. Don't know. But they're very deep in the woods, cut off from society. No one knows they're there. It's just them three. You get the sense that there's been some sort of apocalypse because they are, again, they're isolated, they're cut off, food is limited. They're only getting things, food that is from the land. So anything that they can get from the land, that's the only resources they have. Um, they travel by tying a rope and then tethering it to the house, and they, as long as they're attached to the rope, the evil won't infect them. But if the rope is cut, or if they loosen themselves from the rope, or if it is untied from the house, then the evil that's in the woods, and I guess the rest of the world, um, can affect them. Um, so yeah, so they're in the woods, just isolating themselves. Um, and one of the boys, he begins to have doubts about if what their mother is telling them is true. Um, they eventually run out of food, so the general paranoia of just being out in the woods and just scared of this evil. So you have this paranoia, the isolation. Um, there start to be some distrust. They're hungry. Um, and then just like the religious, I don't want to say trauma or abuse, but this religious fervor, just eventually all of that just has this melting pot that it starts to wear on the family. Um, at one point in time, they're going out in the woods, and I'm not going to break down the entire movie, but just kind of give like the crux of it. At one point, I guess they're looking for food, but they're out in the woods, and then one of the boys hears something. He hears that he thinks that his brother says something derogatory towards him, and then out of anger, he steps on the rope. And at this point, I'm not sure if he stepped on it intentionally to make it rip and come off, or if he just wanted to make him stumble. But I thought that he did it to make the rope like rip. But the rope does rip. Um, excuse me. Later on in the film, it's kind of played off like it was an accident, and that's left ambiguous. And I do like that, but I'm thinking that he did that to actually like seriously harm his brother. But the rope comes off. He falls. He breaks his ankle, which I don't think he meant to do. I think that he just wanted the rope to come off. The rope comes off, he breaks his ankle, and then they are vulnerable to whatever's in the woods. And then the audience and the mother, we do see an entity taking the shape. I think it was an old woman, but I don't think the boys see it. The woman, Halle Berry, tells them to close their eyes. And I'm not going to go over the whole movie, just going to explain this because I think it explains the movie. I think she tells them to close their eyes at one point, and then she ties them back to the rope. So we, the audience, and she see it, but the boys don't see it. I think that they do feel something, but they don't actually see it. I think that this worked really well because it plays on, okay, is Halle Berry's character just a paranoid schizophrenic, or is something going on? And it plays on that really well. And I think that one of the sons starts to question, and things go left. For me, I think that this film should have played a little bit more with the idea of like the paranoia. Is it real? Is it not? I think early on you get the idea that um, it's all in her head. Um, but then there are some things that confirm that maybe that it is true, that maybe what they're seeing is true. And I guess that does work well, but I think that it needed more of a, like, there are times to where it's almost confirmation that okay, there is an evil in the woods. But then we later learned the mom said that it infected the whole world, but then we see outsiders and then we see that it didn't infect the whole world. So was she just wrong about how big the impact was, or like, or what? Like, so I feel like I think it needed to be a little bit more coy and ambiguous. I think there were times to where it gave confirmation that it was real, but then it later contradicted itself, but not in a good way that makes you play with reality, more of a way that I think is more of a plot hole. And I don't know, maybe I need to rewatch this movie and see the details, but it gets confirmed, then gets contradicted. And I just think that this film could have worked well if it played with like religious paranoia, and if it played with like this idea of paranoia, religious zealousness, overzealousness, and paranoia, religious overzealousness, and mental health. Like if it kind of played with that really well, and just making it kind of like became much more of a psychological thriller than an explicitly supernatural, I think it could have hit more, because I think that could have been a real life horror of been like, okay, if you put someone in an isolated state, um, also unattractive conditions, and just like paranoia, and you just throw in like this religious like overzealousness, like what can happen? That can be a melting pot, almost. I guess like the film kind of also could have went about like The Shining if they did want it a little bit more supernatural, but it didn't necessarily go that way. But I think also to keep it grounded in reality, just kind of play with that, just like idea of like, okay, overzealousness, paranoia, mental health, and it didn't really do that. It kind of leaned more into the supernatural, but then it contradicted itself. So I was a little bit confused at times about like what exactly, like what was true and what wasn't. Like we get confirmation. But then, so I guess how I'm interpreting it is that it was supernatural, and then the mom was just incorrect about how widespread it was. It just wasn't quite as big and widespread as she thought, and that doesn't really work well for me. I would have rather it been like, okay, the whole world is fucked, or it was all in her head, like kind of all or nothing. I feel like the film kind of like settled for lukewarm. I would say that this is a decent film. I would say this is decent. Like, I'm not gonna straight up say I like it or dislike it. This was a decent film. I think that there were some opportunities to play again more on that mental health and paranoia. I think that we should have. I didn't really like seeing the brothers turn on each other. I didn't like that. Um, like that didn't work for me. So I'm actually leaning towards that. I didn't like it if I had to choose. But I would say that this is a decent film that I just didn't exactly care for. I think that they left some runners on base. I think there was an opportunity to make this more grounded in reality and to make this more scary. Um, I will say that the creatures, the entities, they looked good. That was scary. The performances were good. Halle Berry did a good job. It's great to see her back on the big screen. I know she was in a movie on Netflix where she was a boxer. So that was cool. So it's good to see Halle Berry back. She's a 90s and 2000s icon. But yeah, I feel like this movie had opportunity to become a little bit scarier and to play on like that human element, and it missed for me. But just I don't think this is a bad movie, so I think that it could be an enjoyable time. So I think it's still playing in theaters. Yeah, so yeah, this is that's gonna be my, I guess that kind of was a spoiler review of Never Let Go starring Halle Berry. I think the boys did a good job. Kid actors can sometimes, they're kids, so they're growing in the craft. So yeah, so it's still playing in theaters, I believe. So check it out if you want to wait till streaming. Not sure when that's gonna be out, but yeah, give this a check. So give this a like, subscribe, share. This is a crazy, scary, cool spoiler review of Never Let Go. Thank you and stay spooky.